Good morning, viewers. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Scooter here at Granville Guitars, coming to you live this morning from the Granville Guitars World Headquarters here in lovely St. Petersburg, Florida. Today is Wednesday, November the 7th, and we have a time capsule here. They come into the shop occasionally where you'll get a vintage amplifier that is almost exactly as it left the factory. I've been looking through this thing this morning. This is a 1974 Fender Twin Reverb, and with one component exception, I can find nothing in this amp that is not original. It's a window into an earlier time. Not as early as some people might like, but there you go. We're going to start down here. I'll show you the front of the amp at the end of all of this. It is so clean as to be ridiculous. It's just been well kept its entire life. Whoever bought it new and has owned it throughout the years has just taken exceptional, wonderful care of it. As we can see down here, you know, there's a mixture of caps from various eras. We see brown turds, and we see some of the clumpy blue ones that we would have seen in this era. Your tone stack caps are right here. Let's see here. Normal channel slope, plate resistors. They all look original right in there. Okay. Then right next door, we've got our first preamp cathode resistor and caps right here. These bypass arrangements to ground. Those are Spragues. Those are, or not Spragues, I'm sorry. Those are Mallory's that are correct of the era. We have a clumpy brown turd right here. And a blue one. You'll see a mixture of these blue and brown ones in amps of the 70s and later. You'll see it all through the 70s and even into the 80s. But as we scan past here, you see the second bunch of vibrato channel plate resistors and you know, associated stuff there. And then we get into the reverb circuit, coupling capacitors, and recovery plate resistors, etc. All of this stuff looks pretty stock to me. Now this one cap right here, this 0.01 600 volt, that may not be original, but as I'm looking at it right here, this connection right here, the wax is still in place from where the whole board was dipped in wax. So I don't know. I don't think this resistor is original here. It's a little blob of solder there on that end of that cap. Let's pick that off. Come down here further, and you know, we've got our phase inverter, long-tailed pair, splitter resistors, phase inverter plate resistors right here. All the typical silver face values. And some of you out there may cry foul, why aren't you ripping those out and black facing this amp? Well, I'm going to leave it alone, to be honest with you. There is a little work that does need to happen to this amplifier. It's humming a fair amount. And so the filter caps are going to go away because they are original, as you'll see here in just one moment. So we're going to start with the filter caps in an effort to reduce the hum. It's got the dreaded balance circuit in place of a proper bias supply, but this amp is so clean and so original that I'm kind of wanting to leave it this way, provided it doesn't sound bad. And it actually, outside of the hum that I just mentioned, it does sound very good. It's got Fenderosity to spare. You can see if I zoom in here, screen grid resistor still in place. Swampers are under there. They're very clean. They don't look like they've been abused. The lead dress in this amp is very nice and tidy for that era. Sometimes you'd get them, excuse me, where they were pretty sloppy and not all that well done. I'm not seeing any capacitors to ground from pin 8 on the power tubes as you might sometimes in this era. So that's come later. We can see our bias supply right here. We can see just above that on the same little board, that is your rectifier diode arrangement. But yeah, everything in here, all the pot codes are within that era. Power cords original and very clean and very nice condition. It does have one replaced component. I did mention this. You can't really see it up here. The power switch has been replaced, and they've used kind of an oddball part that's a little bit underrated for the task. So I'm probably going to change that as well. Let's flip this over and check out the other side. Alright, and here we see on the other side here where you've got your original Mallory's in place, and none of them are really visually leaking. They all look pretty good, but the amp is humming, so I have to assume first that the filtering is not what it should be. I have a strong suspicion that a lot of the tubes in this amp are original. Let's come down here and zoom in a little bit, and let's see if I can get those first three preamp tubes. These two here, hopefully you can see that. Let's get this down a bit lower and try that. There we go. That's a little better. Those are red label RCAs, both of them. They're both 7025s, which is what they should be. This one is also a red label RCA 12AT7. The label is faded a bit more, probably because that tube gets run quite hot. Down here to V4, we got another red label RCA. 7025. I'm flabbergasted. You don't typically find tube amps this original. 12AX7 red label RCA in V5, and then finally the phase inverter tube or driver tube, another red label 12AT7. Absolutely wonderful old tubes if they're still working. And like I said, I've had this amp on and it sounds really good, so I have no doubt that these tubes are probably good enough to work. And we've got some RCA short bottles over here for power. Now these are probably not original, but they're obviously very old. Whoever may have worked on this amp before has paired this tube up with this one and this one up with this one like that, so you have the two sides opposing to one another with relative strength. The two middle tubes have 4 and 3 written on them, which is not where they're supposed to be. This is actually V7, 8, 9, and 10. I don't know what those numbers mean. I didn't put them on there, but anyway, so these are, if they're good, we're leaving them in here. They're certainly old enough to be original. Let's look at some transformers here. Your Reverb Transformer date. Let's get this position better here. Your Reverb Transformer date is 606-3. So that is a 73. The output transformer is a 606-4, which is how we're dating the amplifier with that date and the pots. It's the latest, the most recent date of any of the transformers, and most of the pots are 73, 74. So there's your output tranny. And then down here we have the choke and power transformer. And the choke right there, 6063, 73. And why am I saying 73? Because it's a silver face, so it would not be a 63. And there we go. There's our power transformer. I've blurred it up here. 6063. So yeah, we've got a pretty closely matched set of transformers all the way across the amp, and correct of the era. So yeah, it's gonna get. I'm gonna put new filter caps in. We have a pair of JJ100 at 500 volts that are going in here, and I'm going to use F&T 22 at 500 for these three. And I'm probably going to replace the resistors. There's two 220Ks, one here and one down in there. I'm going to replace those guys. And even though they may not need it, I'll probably replace the 10K and this 2.2 that's up here as well. So yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to show off on the chassis here. Also, you may have seen when I shifted up earlier, this amp has original JBL's orange frame D120s in, and they're just in spectacular, amazing, awesome condition. This thing is showroom. For its age, it really is immaculately clean, and it's got the tone. It, like I said, it hummed a bit. Also, the tremolo was ticking some, so I have a series of things I'm going to go through to reduce that a bit and get this thing ready to sell, because that's what's going to happen with it. It's available for sale as we speak, but when I plugged into it, I noticed a few little problems, so we're gonna straighten that out and get this thing back out there and working for a living again. All right, so let's dig in. All right, here we are. It's probably about an hour and a half later, because this is meticulous work. Brand new filter caps. I elected for, where's my pointer? The main totem pole power supply caps are JJ's. Opted for 100 microfarad 500 volt. The originals are 350. And down here, the original 20s at 500 we've replaced with F&T 22 at 500. Replaced these two bridging resistors here, and found some new old stock 220Ks to stick in down in between the totem pole caps. So we have new caps in this bad boy. I've also tested all of the 9-pin tubes in the amp, and they're all testing good in the tube testers. My battery of tube testers. They're all RCAs. Are they original? Well, there's no way to be sure. But they certainly could be original. All of them could be. So, yeah, the only true test of a tube is the amp itself. As some of you may or may not know, you can have a tube test good in a tester and then promptly sound like crap in the amplifier or exhibit problems in an amplifier. It's completely possible, happens all the time. I've got the power tubes in the tube testers right now, heating up, getting ready for their testing. And I'm going to replace that power switch that I mentioned earlier, because the one that's in there is just a little bit wanky for my taste. I'm going to put one in that's at least the right amperage and looks a little more like it should. If you can see here, here's the power switch. Let me zoom in there. You can't see it from the inside, but here's the replaced power switch, and the battery is quite a bit longer than the original standby switch. So not only does it look a little weird, the battery is very loose and kind of, I don't know, it's not pleasing to me at all. The other one's loose, but not nearly as much. Plus the amperage rating on this is too low for the amp, so I'm going to replace that, and we'll be back after that. Alright, we're all back together now. Yeah, I just wanted to show off this front control panel. You rarely see them in condition like this. This one here is just clean, clean, clean. No discernible chips or dents or anything. Few little water stains here and there. There's one right there. That'll probably wipe off if somebody, yep, it just wiped off as I was sitting here. I mean, this is in incredible shape. Grill cloth is sagged and moved a little bit over the years, not a whole bunch. Possible it could have been replaced. Matter of fact, now that I'm looking at it, I would bet money that it had been replaced. You'll notice these screws and the Fender logo. Those are quite a bit larger than they normally are. So this could be a new grill cloth. It was installed pretty well. Not as straight as they typically are from the factory originally, but not bad. Let's move out here and you can see the thing in its totality here. It's just immaculate, and it sounds really good too. Give me a minute, I'll throw a mic on it. Okay, here's our good friend, the 1974 Fender Twin Reverb, all spiffed up and ready to rock the world here. Got it mic'd up with a Sennheiser 421. It's a master volume with the pull boost, and I've just got the master turned all the way up, so it's essentially out of the circuit. Right now I've got the bright switch on, volume's at 3, trebles at about 4.5, mid about 4.5, bass at about 3, reverb at 5, intensity and speed on the tremolo are at 4 and 5 respectively. So sounds pretty good to me. Completely unmessed with, friends. Unmessed with. I replaced the filter caps. I put a new power switch in. The bias is still the balance circuit that everybody hates, and I hate it too. But the amp is so original that I want to leave it original until the amp is for sale. If the new owner decides to blackface it, then it's going to get blackfaced. But the amp sounds great like it is. And I think the lesson to be learned there for you and me and everybody is that if it sounds good, it's good. It doesn't matter that it's not black-faced. If the amp sounds wonderful to you and you make good music with it and it touches you when you play through it, then it's good. It doesn't matter what the circuit is. This is a prime example of that. This thing is almost completely as it left the factory. I think maybe the grill cloth's been replaced. I don't know. I replaced the power switch that had already been replaced with an inappropriate one. And it's now got new large-scale electrolytic filter caps in the power supply, as we've seen earlier in this video. But other than that, original speakers, hell, I really think that these are probably at least 2 of the 4 original tubes. I think it may have had a pair of them replaced at some point. But, man, I think it sounds beautiful. Just a little bit wet. And that's on 3, which is still clean and firm and whatnot. And yes, the amp weighs a metric ton because it's got JBLs in it with heavy magnets, and it's got big transformers, and yeah, it's every ounce of 80 pounds, I would imagine, close to it. But it just sounds wonderful. So I'm going to leave it alone. That's it. That's all I know for today. 1974 Fender Twin Reverb. Normal channel works. I got it all turned down because if you're not using it, you want to kind of reduce your noise floor a little bit. It's still pretty quiet. Anyway, I had it turned down just because I wasn't going to use it. But there it is. It works too. All functions work. Everything's normal with it, and it just sounds beautiful. So, 1974 Silverface Twin Reverb in original condition, except for what we just mentioned. Let's call it 95% original. You all right with that? Anyway, that's all I got for today. I'm Scooter here at Granville Guitars. If you got any questions about anything we do here, seek us out on the web at www.granvilleguitars.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, and also over at the blog, A View from the Granville Bench, over on WordPress. That's all I know for today. Have a lovely day.